society. And you know, during the financial market crisis, we said, ha ha ha, have a closer look at Great Britain, Ireland, and so on. They failed during the financial market crisis due towards our short time allowance system. Germany was very successful. Yeah? Therefore, the German short time allowance society, what we call the social market economy, is more successful than any other, yes, shows social policy system. My argument would be that now a basic income society will be even more successful than the short time allowance society, so that a modern German social market economy would have to switch to a basic income society. Yeah. Why? Because we see now first we have many beneficiary system, many beneficiaries during the crisis. So many individuals now know what a workfare system is. I said it, yeah. Many came under pressure and said, this is not good, yeah. Targeting is bad, means testing is bad. Everyone learns it, but at the moment we do not learn, at least in Germany, the consequences. We still believe when we move out of the crisis, then our short time allowance society is good to move to the next crisis. Yeah. So my argument is that what we need is, and what I have done here, is to identify the misdirection of the traditional crisis aid system, the problems with means testing, and the low efficiency of very low efficiency of targeting. By the way, because someone mentioned it this morning, this might hold for digitalization also. My argument is, so this ex post governance will hold also as a security argument of basic income against the fears we have with digitalization, because it's also digitalization is also directed by unforeseen contingencies. We do not know if the economy will hire more or less persons, if individual labor will break down, or if wages will break down or will increase. We do not know it. Yeah, even if there is a positive expectancy, we can fail. So move to ex post governance. So perhaps the last important argument, what we had under Bismarck in Germany and also under the social market economy of Ludwig Erhard in the 1960s in Germany, they were supported by insightful entrepreneurs, yeah, and they said we should switch because we see the creativity potential and the improvement of productivity by social policy. That's exactly the same problem what we have at the moment to switch to basic income, because old-fashioned entrepreneurs and citizens do not believe in creativity, in the creativity of leisure time, which switch to unearned wage, to unpaid work and to paid work to increase productivity of the whole society. They don't get it. They have to get it now. And what was very interesting at these times was that many reports at the time of Bismarck, at the time of Erhard, especially the German libertarians, the liberal democratic party, they said, oh, it's too expensive. We cannot introduce the social market economy during the 60s. And it was very interesting that our Chancellor Adenauer only said, we will produce enough kits to rescue it in the future because they are so productive. Now we have not produced enough kits, that's right, but we can be more productive due to basic income. Last comment here, do we really need so much pilots? These reforms were introduced with no pilots at all. And nowadays, one says to the UBI proposers, another pilot, an additional pilot, the pilot is temporarily too short, this is not high enough, this is a problem. If we have to take care about the best pilot, then we will wait long. That's for me an argument of the enemies of basic income. So you see, my prediction is the basic income society will be much more resilient than the short time allowance society at actual German social market economy. And will outform the short-time allowance society. Why? Because this is an ex post governance concept with time sovereignty. And only an ex post governance conceptualization can solve the problem of vulnerability under different crises and challenges like digitalization and the ethical challenges we have at the moment towards a society of time sovereign and self-determined creative individuals. Yeah, this is what I add to my measures. But you see here, my measures survive the test without any kind of creativity, only by showing that it's cheaper under the crisis. That's what we are doing at the moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was absolutely wonderful. And I love the dose of optimism as well. Much needed. Now time for questions. And we'll start with Arsham.
Thank you, Bernhard. This was very fresh talk, I should say, introducing fresh ideas. Is it possible to put slide 9 back on? I have a question about slide 9.
Which slide 9? Okay. Okay.
So if I look at this picture that you have sketched, I see that you want to give NBI, as you call it, not just to people, to physical people, but also to companies. Basically, you want to treat companies as people. Am I correct about that?
No.
Okay.
Here, that is the landlord. That's a person.
The
Here,
last one, the right one, yeah.
You see it here. That's the capital provider or the capital provider or the worker at the bank. These are individuals. I give the net basic income only to individuals, not to other institutions.
Okay, so you want to basically eliminate the overhead of the companies based on the salaries and stuff. So the CEO and all of the employees get a benefit, NBI, just like everybody else, essentially.
Yeah, clear.
Right.
Concerning the interest payments and the rent payments, this is unearned income. Why shouldn't we stop that? Yeah. So the only problem is redemption. That's on which we have a discussion. Should this be prolonged that we have to pay back it later because this is a property right? Yeah, not only income on property rights, but a property right. Or should we skip it also completely? This depends on if you are more left-wing or are more conservative with respect to the property rights system.
So my question would be concerning about the profitability of these companies. Are you intending to basically pause the profits for all of these companies at that point and just cover the cost and overhead and carry on until the crisis is over? Or do you want to also compensate for the profitability of the companies?
Yeah, my basic argument is that any profits are in the lockdown here. Yes, with the first part of the individuals, yeah, who are directly under the lockdown, yeah, of their income. And I argue, if you can dismiss the profitability, say, of a restaurant immediately overnight, why not for the rentier and why not for the capital owner? Yeah, why only for these persons here and then support them to pay the money to the landlords and the capital owners and the workers of the banks? Yeah. So for me, that's not really logic. That's not really a logical thing during times of crisis, because this does not show solidarity. This shows a large redistributive system towards unearned income. Yeah,
I agree with you.
these arguments.
The problem would be to sell it to politicians, because that would essentially mean completely pausing the entire economy of the country entirely, not just partially. So
yeah, the question is here: do we apply this only to lockdown? Yeah, to payments which are under the lockdown, or to everyone? There may exist some industries which work quite well, and then the question is: should they be under that system also? The only requirement here is that everyone receives the net basic income. Why? Because you do not know if in the next stage of the pandemic, yeah, you will be under the suspension of income due to the crisis and the health policy with that red with that double lines here, with that red double lines. You don't know it to unforeseen contingency. So therefore, it's a security for everyone. But if your income is locked down or not is what you do not know at the moment. You see, I'm a social contractarian. That's my argument behind it. And then the question is, and you raised the question, should we apply it to everyone? That any interest payments, yeah, are then in the lockdown, or only towards the interest payments and towards the rents, for which there is a lockdown in the first stage, say in the restaurant. That's an open question. And that, I would say, we have to discuss.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your illuminating question.
Thank you. And now Otto.
Great. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed that. I mean, I'm in large agreement with a lot of it. I mean, I'm not sure about the details of some of the details that I have some questions about. But I mean, the overall idea is, I think, is very solid. So my question is in terms of moving towards a long-term plan. I mean, so if the suspension of, so there has to be some kind of a criterion of suspension of income at the first stage, which then triggers the suspension of interest payments and so on, rents and interest payments. And so the question is this understood as being sort of is this understood as being sort of a UBI plus this kind of a suspension place system in the long run, or is this understood to be the basis that there is no basic income unless there's some trigger is reached, you know, some clear criterion is met, in which case we run into, of course, the problems of, you know, who gets to define what counts as the trigger. And then, you know, is it a full lockdown? What about smaller crises and so on? And so, so how do you see this as functioning, as providing this this stability when we don't know exactly what should count as this kind of a suspension level event?
Okay, so very important question, and it's clear I took for granted once again this red double line here. Yeah. I said, due to a given health policy or whatever, there is a lockdown of these incomes here, of these profits and of wages and so on and so forth. I do not discuss that. My argue is I cannot solve health policy with basic income. It's a little bit too rough. So the rightful measures for the lockdown is what I do not incorporate into my argumentation. I simply argue, you see it here, I simply argue concerning the crisis, we switch from the idea of an ex ante conception of statistical uncertainty towards unforeseen contingencies. This leads us towards the crisis. Therefore, we need in the end ex post governance. Now, your argument could be, we see today by matching means testing and target efficiency, we are very, very low under times of prosperity also. So your argument could be unforeseen contingencies are important under prosperity also. Then we should switch immediately during the crisis. It's simplified, yeah, due to the fact that it is relatively cheap. Yeah, we had to switch immediately towards the fully participatory basic income. Yeah, because this unforeseen contingency argument could be a general one. I was not too much interested in the full-fledged of that argument because I have identified it as a specific argument under the pandemic at which we are at the moment. Yeah, contingencies are unforeseen, every day new ones, unexpected mutants, yeah, a lot of evolutionary drawbacks and so on. Yeah, nearby your arguments, yeah. So therefore, we should switch to such a system. And then you could argue, why not switch to such a system even under prosperity, because this is better than for the arguments of creative life, of self-determinance, and also in all these aspects we have discussed as ethical aspects before my contribution. Then, in addition, this might work. So you see here, what I have shown only as this graph here, yeah, there's a lot behind that graph to argue what is this transitionally phase here, from here to here and from here to here, to find the rightful measures to identify the crisis. But also, could we argue that we don't need, I have good arguments for it, but it's me, that we don't have to argue on NBI as a crisis measure only. And when we move out of the crisis, then we restitute the workfare system. Yes, many of my mainstream economists are convinced now of the idea of the NBI, but they said, let's switch to workfare system when we are in prosperity, because there we can exploit prosperity. With the participatory basic income, we cannot. And then I claim it's wrong. But this discussion is much more difficult than the discussion of UBI in times of crisis. Yeah, so you open the box of Pandora, I would say.
Excellent. Now a question from Martin.
Yeah, thanks. That was a great talk. Can I do two follow-up questions, or should I just do one? Okay. So
if I do not answer too long.
one thing that I thought, as a response to what you said specifically on Ashram's point, I was wondering if maybe one problem is that you underestimate how unequal risk is distributed, right? Because it's not actually the case that risk is the same for everyone, no matter what your job is, right? So if you're a hairstylist, that's the first job that's gone in the lockdown. If you are a doctor, there's no way that they basically put you on furlough in the middle of a health crisis, right? So I wonder if there should be a mechanism that somehow acknowledges how, in a way, still how unfair this risk is distributed, and that it's not just completely random, that at any point you might lose your job, but rather that some people are much more vulnerable now than they used to. And then the second really brief point is I think you can actually solve health problems with a UBI to some extent. Namely, in the UK, one problem is that people can't afford to stay at home when they have symptoms because sick pay is really low in the UK. So financially, some people are forced to basically go to work when they know that they might have corona. Whereas obviously, if you have something like UBI, that would allow people to stay at home when they should be staying at home. So I think there is a sense in which a UBI can address certain public health problems.
So to make it short, with the second one, I would comply completely. So no problem with that. If this is satisfying for you as an answer. With the first one, I'm not sure, because as an economist, I have to say this depends on your definition of risk. If you apply the economic definition of risk or the theoretical definition of risk, then it's an ex ante measure. And then I argue ex ante measures fail. Why? Because you say with a certain argument on risk, yeah, not unforeseen contingencies or writing of down contracts towards, say, specific contingencies is too costly. That's the second argument for ex post governance by Williamson, for example. Then you move towards a certain hidden idea of target efficiency. Then you know a little bit, okay, the doctor may have less risk than this person and another person. Sometimes this may be right, because you said a doctor may have more assets, more wealth, so he's less vulnerable. So therefore, we need, for ex post governance, we need a quite good measure of resilience and vulnerability instead of risk. So therefore, you compared it. Therefore, you combined it a little bit. I do not know if you have a typical risk measure in your head. Yeah, say inequality-averse societies or risk-averse societies may react differently towards risk-neutral societies. Then I would say, yes, that's okay. That's what we have to prove in our lab. If the outcome of UBI of NBI may be a little bit different because we have to solve inequality aversion also. But you see here my argument of inequality aversion and also risk is that some, and especially the unearned income receivers, yeah, have no risk at all. Yeah, that's an example. Perhaps I have to add the doctors or wealthy individuals also. This is one example that these guys know that they will receive their income because government covers it by their Corona aid measure. Yeah. And you see, by the way, the risk for them is zero. And if you introduce my argument of solidarity, this vanishes. Yeah, but that may be only an example. If you add to my argument more examples, say vulnerability is not only with the lockdown, yeah, then with the double red, yeah, then it may be okay. On the other hand, once again, my argument is unforeseen contingency. Do we know that everyone will move to the doctor today if we have a new mutant? Then he has to address insolvency perhaps overnight because he will not receive any individuals moving to him. Yeah, then you see that's an unforeseen contingency for the doctor. Yeah, so how to define vulnerability? That's very difficult. So your argument, your aspect is very demanding. Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you very, very much for that presentation and for your questions. I would like to add a special thank you to Professor Neumärker for making my job of giving the final remarks so very easy, because he has already drawn connections between so many of the presentations that we have seen today. So I will only say one thing and then ask people for some final comments as well. And this is where I will come back to you, Reinhard, because I can see you have your hand up. The only thing that I would add in closing is that this has been the first conference on universal basic income alone that I attended, but I have attended so many conferences in political theory. And what struck me today was the emphasis that all the presentations placed on the experience of the regular individual who is moving through this world of economic systems and organizations and institutions who affect his life in various ways. And I love that we had a strong global perspective as well, looking at what is happening to those who are exploited in other countries, but also the wider political impact of universal basic income in India, and this all together with you know, I liked it when Professor Neumärker used me as an example, what's happening to me as a person who's just paying rent in London during the coronavirus crisis. And we can add all the presentations that we've had today along this narrative. Otto, with his question, actually, how do we measure better? How can we use UBI to measure better the experience of these people? So this has been amazing to witness, just the importance that every single presentation has given to the fate of the regular individual who's caught in these structures. So thank you very much, and I would like to invite everyone to share what they thought of the conference, and I will start with Reinhard, who probably just has a question for Professor Neumärker.
Yes, thank you, Diana. Yes, thank you. First of all, thank you very much for this very interesting presentation. I'm actually German myself. I live in the UK, and I tried to understand in your calculations, where does the social health insurance
come? Because this is mostly paid by employer and employees. And if your model for this emergency or NB emergency basic income is applied, I try to find how is the cost for the social health insurance covered, because it doesn't seem to appear under the state expenses, and I couldn't find it. So just this, because it's a considerable amount which is spent through the social health insurance. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, this is very important. First of all, in the emergency as in NBI as emergency aid measure, yeah, we didn't offset the social insurance, especially the health insurance system, against basic income, because we cannot do that in Germany due to legal restrictions. Therefore, I said it's only for reform. The second argument, that's very clear that you said, should we cover these specific expenditures of a household still at the moment? Yeah. So my argument here is it is not included. Let us calculate it that it is included. Yeah. So sorry, it's not excluded at the moment. It's inside the consumption expenditures because it's defined as a consumption of the health system. Yeah, it's not excluded, but we can exclude it if we move more and more towards UBI, and if we have the argument that we should also substitute health. From my point of view, but that's my point of view. It's impossible to substitute the health system. And we see, especially in Germany, because you are living in Great Britain, that the German system is more expensive, but quite better in covering health problems, yes? So therefore, I'm one of the proponents who argued for this, we need an extra fund, a public health fund or something like this, because the payments into the health system can never be covered by the basic income. Yeah, because with your basic income, if you become seriously ill, just like with cancer or so, your basic income cannot rescue you. So therefore, the health system is a very specific case. Yeah, we have to think about another financing option. If it is inside a crisis or outside a crisis, does not matter. Therefore, I didn't exclude it.
Thank you. Any final comments?
Well, I guess this is no time for long speeches at this point anymore, but just to say thank you very, very much for everybody, the speakers and all the participants. It's been, I think, a really productive and wonderful event. So thank you very much.
Thanks for organizing this. It was really great. Thanks for taking the initiative and, then taking into account the Corona crisis and, not just dropping the project, but actually organizing now something on an online event. It was great. I enjoyed it a lot. So thanks to the organizers.
Yeah, same here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being tenacious as well.
Thank you also, and I have learned a lot of additional arguments. I have to let them enter into my arguments also. So that's very impressive of the day today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's the part where we would now go for drinks.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we cannot go to the pub. I think in Great Britain you can.
Yeah, outside if you've pre-booked 3 months in advance. Anyway, thank you again. That's really enjoyed this a lot.
Bye. And cheers.